So, welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure to host you here at Toku's first large-scale event after a lot of virtual events and smaller scale ones, all enforced upon us because of obviously the COVID-19 restrictions. So I'm particularly happy tonight to see you all here. Let's be fair, in an incredible location as well. So I see a lot of familiar faces. I see a lot of new faces as well. For those of you that are less familiar with Toku and still getting acquainted, allow me to give you a little bit of context about who we are, what we do, and what we're trying to achieve. So Toku, to start, is a Singaporean brand. We created the company and launched the operations here a little over 4 years ago now, and have been very fortunate to scale exponentially from Singapore, not only in this market, but all across Asia Pacific. So what do we do? Well, at our roots, we are a telco, and our core is still very much that of a cloud communications provider. We help enterprises by building bespoke solutions to help them cope with all the new challenges of communications, of course, but also customer engagement and, in a larger scale, customer experience in general. And that is what we are trying to achieve, is to reimagine customer experience. So tonight, specifically, as you could see on the event invite, we are talking about the Toku Contact Center, which is our latest product. And yes, it's obviously a very important part of tonight. But overall, I really want to use the opportunity to be able to converse with every one of you and network about customer experience in general. And for Toku Contact Center specifically, what is interesting is that it has been designed, developed, and then also deployed during the pandemic. And that made us really believe in that opportunity of being very personalized, very bespoke, because a lot of the company's expectations, a lot of the challenges have been moving quite a bit over the last 2 years, and I'm sure that most of you here tonight can relate to that. Not only as customers, but also as business leaders. So, as customers, we have adapted our lifestyle, we've adapted the way we shop, for example, but companies have also overnight been forced to completely change the way they operate. And that's where a lot of pain points from our customers actually came to light and were pushed to us by, how can you help? What can you do? I now have a lot of agents that previously were in the same location in a BPO, centralized with a secured network, the same work environment for everyone, and suddenly they are forced to work from home. And how do we cope with that? How do we adapt? All right. And so the bespoke approach is really now in our DNA of making sure that large enterprises that need something that is not simply off the shelf, but something that is really adapted to their needs, that they can work with us, with our solution architects, to actually get to improve the customer experience and get the answers that they need, not trying to force something that has been developed for a standard. And I think that makes us particularly attractive for enterprises that have complex operations, but also a multinational presence. One of those customers is, I think, known from every one of you, which is foodpanda. They have a massive scale in Asia Pacific. Actually, you might have read about them because they are celebrating their 10th year anniversary this month and also recently opened their new APAC regional headquarters on Robinson Road. And so for tonight, I'm particularly happy and honored that foodpanda's representative, Jacob Engele, CEO of the region, has accepted to talk with me about how enterprises can scale their customer experience. Thank you, Jacob. Please welcome him. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I have a lot of cue cards, but it's not that I don't know what to say, it's that the team is afraid I would talk too long. So we also have a timer.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I'm within the timing. Look, obviously foodpanda is a known brand, and with the scale that you have today and everything that has been accomplished, it's definitely going to be interesting to hear directly from you about customer experience, the challenges that you have, but maybe for a little bit of context, if you can put that in numbers, put that in something tangible.
Yeah, sure. So customer service particular, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, as you say, foodpanda in the meantime over 10 years is definitely a bit of a bigger operation. We have around a bit more than 5,000 call center agents across serving our 11 markets. We operate there 11 languages. And it's also set up with a bit of a BPO setup across 8 different BPO providers plus some internal resources. So quite a holistic and complex setup, definitely. Yeah.
Yes, and not only complex in terms of size, but also in terms of the number of use cases that you do. foodpanda has been developing quite a number of activities and services over the years.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I have to be careful. I think every CEO believes his business is the most complex one, right? I'm no exception, probably. But I think it's quite a complex business in terms of customer service, because on the one side it's somewhat a very fast service, right? So you place an order and then ideally in 20 minutes you have the food if everything goes okay, and there's lots of things to be sorted out while those 20 minutes pass. Second, there's quite a lot of different stakeholders involved. I think for many companies the main communication might be between the customer and the agent. For us, there's a rider to customer communication, customer to agent, agent to restaurant, restaurant to customer, sometimes also a rider to restaurant, and so on. So there's a lot of communication happening in a short period of time, and and that makes things sometimes very, very tricky for us. Yeah.
I can imagine, and definitely also because it's real time, and in this case you're talking mostly, I guess, about the customer support part, and then you have all the additional use cases related to sales, marketing that are not necessarily within the peak hours, but also happen during the day.
Yeah, so there's exactly, so there's a live operations part, which I was just describing, but then of course, in order to operate efficient and realize synergies, a lot of outreach activity we do from our call center. Yeah, like I don't know, selling additional products to restaurants, doing compliance calls, having rider queries around compensation, whatnot, lots of things. And so all of this is handled by this call center operation. Yeah.
And so now these real-time operations in particular, you have multiple channels to cater for that. How are you looking at, is it more how many channels can we add, or are we looking at really having a seamless experience within one channel? Where do you set the bar?
Yeah, so I think we come a bit from a history where we have or had a lot of channels. So in those 11 markets we operate, there's very different solutions used by the population for communication. It's line in Thailand, fiber in Philippines, and so on. So back in the days we had a bit of a more diversified approach, I would say. Nowadays what we are trying to do is to really simplify the setup, and for us what has been very successful is to move as much as possible of our communication actually inside of our app, out of various reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually wondering about that. There is indeed more and more empowerment that has been done in the application to make sure that you don't have to really leave the application anymore. I guess that as a marketplace you started having initially a lot of communication through email, and then over time it has evolved.
Yeah. I mean, foodpanda is 10 years old, right? So we definitely started with a lot of email communication, and then used to have also a lot of SMS communication. But we really made an effort over the last couple of years to really move this away from those two communication streams. So now we move more and more in-app, and also rely a lot. Yeah, I think it's a healthy mix between chat and calling, but as much as possible in-app. Yeah, and I mean the reasons I think are quite obvious. A, we want to make the app as frequently used as possible. For us, it's always good if customers and consumers go back to our app, and then also having it inside of the app gives us just much more possibilities on the technology side. If you have a complex interaction, like just imagine, I don't know, there's an out of stock. You order something and it's out of stock. Resolving this in an external chat is quite complex. It's also complex in-app, but there you have a lot of more options to make a really tailor-made interaction or build a tailor-made interaction around it, which then makes it easier for the customer to respond, to reply, to resolve, and so on. Yeah.
Yes, and in terms of scale, when we're talking about scaling a customer experience, there are two aspects to it, right? So there is the front end, what we as customers are experiencing in the application and just in general as an interaction with the brand. And then there is everything that the brand is doing behind the scenes in order to scale across markets, in order to scale the customer experience in a standardized way. I guess that you want your customers in Singapore to have the same experience as in Pakistan or in Bangladesh, for example.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I think we kind of have like two hearts in our chest always on that topic a little bit. So on the one hand, if you want to run successful technology, it needs to be, or it should be standardized. We came from a setup where we had much less standardization, where countries operated very, very differently. Like I'm talking here 5 years ago. So now we are quite standardized. But then of course you have to be careful. You have to tweak then of course always to the local market as well. Yeah. But I would argue we are probably like 90% on the standardization side and 10% on the localization side if it comes to communication in particular. But I mean, one thing which was very important for us, and I know we worked also very, very closely on that, no matter if you want to standardize, the most important thing is also that you can use a single technology across all of your markets. Yeah? And I talked about 11 markets in foodpanda, so of course there's a lot in Southeast Asia, but then we also operate in places like Pakistan, where it was also very, very difficult for us just to find a reliable technology provider, actually.
And you're talking here about the technology in terms of availability, but I guess that across so different markets, you also have a consideration related to what's the tech savviness, what is the adoption of the technology in those countries.
Yes, that's true. So of course you can have a more complex tech interaction in Singapore than maybe in other markets. But nevertheless, I would argue that if it's a good user experience, also a more tech-savvy market benefits from that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get the UI, the UX. If it's well designed, it should be working no matter what your tech savviness is, your age, your background technologically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think still like ordering food online, right? It sounds like such an easy thing, but and I mean for most people here in the room, probably you're ordering, a couple times a month, and using a food delivery app is something very natural. But if you really sit yourself next to a less tech-savvy user who uses food delivery for the very, very first time, it's actually still very, very complicated. You need to kind of put in your address. You need to select a restaurant out of a couple hundred. Then there's items, there's toppings, there's variations, bundles, etc., and so on. So I think for the whole industry, making food ordering simpler and more, just simpler, I think is still a big challenge ahead of us.
And
Yeah.
when it comes to communications, then we also have the additional complexity of the language. I know that a lot has been done in terms of the chat function, for example, in the application. How are you addressing these specific language differences, and then also from the agent perspective, right? Because the agents are typically working on different markets.
Yeah, so we actually we offer more languages for communication than we offer the app, right? So in some countries, you can get by having the app mainly in English. Yeah, that's actually quite common because Facebook is in English and so on. So they're used to it. But then if it comes to communication with a human being, then the user prefers to fall back to their more natural language. And so definitely on the communication side, the language piece is even more complex, I would say. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Was that your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I also saw that there were like templates that were given. So I imagine that is helping, and some translation features already also, or not?
Yeah, I think that's all kind of in the light what I alluded earlier, that like those templates and like that you can just choose what to answer and so on. So all those aspects are actually super important for us, because the whole goal is to make the interaction with the app and placing orders, transacting, as simple as possible. And of course, if you have a chat and there's an empty field and you have to type something in, it's not super complicated, of course, we can all do that, but it's much easier, of course, or elegant if you have a couple of relevant options to choose on. So, and I think that's just one example, and we are constantly seeking where are more ways to make this interaction even simpler and make choices simpler, maybe sometimes also reduce choices and so on.
So it's all about bringing the customer back to the app, making sure that there is a lot of interaction in the app. And for that, gamification, does that play an important role? Is that something that is still in its infancy? How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, we invested quite early in gamification. We have a gamification feature in our app where, you know, you sign up to challenges, and then you get you need to do specific things. Let's say order 5 times in the afternoon or so on, and then you get rewards. The rewards you can use for discounts or whatnot, right? It has been it's more of an, I would say, at this point, more an innovation project for us, right? But it has good impact, so we're quite happy with it, and so we might be investing even more in that. But it's also an interesting topic around communication, because what I just described is actually quite complicated, and you also have to there's lots of communications involved, right? You need to sign up, then you need to know when you get the reward and so on. And so having like very good in-app communications around those things is almost the core of such features sometimes. Yeah.
And so with all that interaction, right, and the gamification, do you see that also as an additional option, maybe to have the agents interact in another manner than just reimbursing or giving a discount, and having other options related maybe to how many gamification challenges they've won? There is loyalty points. I think that you also have the subscription now. So how are you segregating the different customers at the moment? Are you able to do that kind of personalization?
Yeah, so I mean, we launched our subscription program, and there also part of that is somewhat a more premium customer service, and also with other more premium compensation guidelines and so on. And so that's something we have running since a while, and is also so far quite successful for us. And again, on the tech side, not so easy to do, because you need to apply different SOPs to different customers while they're actually doing the same thing. And so, but I think also those things will become more important, that you segment your customers more and more, and have a different approach to approach them and so on.
Also because loyalty, or at least in other industries like hospitality, you will be more forgiven towards a brand that you are loyal to, that you have experienced a lot, and therefore you know that the standard level of service is higher maybe than the problem you just had with one specific order. So I guess that creating that loyalty is also helping with generating an average customer experience that is representative of foodpanda and not based maybe on a sole event.
Yes. Yeah. No, I would agree. Loyalty is very important. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, what we see is like a customer is still quite fragile somehow during his first 5 transactions with us, right? So if there's a bad customer experience in the first order, then definitely the churn rate is significantly higher. And then after, I would say, roughly 5 transactions, it kind of stabilizes. And you could describe that as something like loyalty, right? And then after that, if you show some kind of fundamental consistency, right? Like maybe, X orders out of 10 are seamless, yeah? Then normally customers stick quite well to the service. Yeah?
Great. Yeah. I want to come back to that, but maybe before we deep dive in that aspect, we're talking about the fact that there are 2 sides, right? The customer side, which is the front end, which is what we experience every time that we are using foodpanda and other brands, and then it is what's happening in behind the scenes. So foodpanda has been scaling aggressively across the region and with a lot of success. Now you're in 11 markets, and we touched upon the point of how much do you do in terms of localization, right? So how has that maybe affected the way that you've scaled, in this case, customer service, not only for customer support, but sales and marketing, just in general, the work with the BPOs and so on?
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned earlier, like our call center setup is around like 5,000 plus agents, right, in different BPOs, and so all those kind of localizations, also those segmenting out premium customers or subscriber customers and applying different SOPs, doing that in a scale of 5,000 agents, it can be quite tricky, right? And so for the longest time we didn't do it because of that, but we invested quite a bit, and also together with Toku, of course, where we built really much more powerful back office interfaces and tools for call center agents, which then support those different SOPs, those different segmentations, and it makes those it makes this more refined approach towards the customer possible. Yeah.
But then for companies that are looking to scale, and what would you recommend? Is it more decentralization in terms of making sure that you can be personalized and localized, or are you actually maybe thinking that centralization is a better option, or something a hybrid? How do you see that in terms of scale?
I mean, I would be very careful with operational complexity, right? But also I would look, what are the technological capabilities I have at this moment, right? So if I have a good solution where I can be very granular and specific towards my customers, then for sure do it. But if the technology is not there and you have to do it with somewhat heavy operational processes and lots of trainings for agents and monitoring SOPs that they are adhered to and so on, then I would rather keep it simple. Yeah.
And I guess that besides the complexity in terms of scaling it in a cost-efficient manner, that might also have an impact if you're replicating too many teams for too many different markets, or is that not really
so if you... Do you mean if you have different...
Today your BPOs and your teams are typically covering multiple markets when it's possible, language-wise, of course, and time zone-wise.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that was for us almost a game changer, where we I mean, a lot of interactions are in English, of course, right, across all markets, right? In the beginning, we had very different SOPs across different markets. And so, yes, despite it's the same language, if the SOPs are significantly different, you cannot run it with the same team, right? And so that was definitely a game changer for us, where we standardized the approach so much between countries that we could operate like all the English interactions somehow with one pool of agents and with one set of SOPs. No, I think in that light, I mean, definitely, yeah, standardization is very, very important. And I think often people underestimate the cost of complexity if you're not standardized enough. Yeah, because everybody only sees, yeah, let's be, you know, as specific as possible. Let's really tailor this to the exact situation, which, you know, on paper sounds great, and everybody wants to do that. But the complexity cost behind it can be quite massive. Yeah.
Thanks for the insight. And maybe to then go back to the point you were making about how you see that customers that are maybe having an unfortunate event in the first orders will have a higher churn, and so you're obviously monitoring all the customer journey and the customer life cycle and their experiences. In terms of then the customer support and the additional work that it represents and behind the scenes, how important are the integrations and automations in the strategy for providing customer experience?
So for particularly new customers?
And just in general, I think, how do you reconcile customer data that you would need to be more personalized, to maybe be more attentive to specific cases, or to already see that they have had a complaint? So the integrations there will involve other tools, other systems, other databases.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, in terms of kind of understanding why a customer doesn't come back, why a customer churns, also why a customer changes his, you know, order pattern, we definitely aggregate a lot of different data sources, out of all different directions. A lot of that is internal sources. A lot is also external providers we use, and so on. And so, yeah, that's definitely something where we invest a lot of effort. Yeah.
And then creating that, converting that in actionable insights, I guess, for the agents and the team leads that are in real time conversing and interacting with the customers.
Yeah, exactly. And also kind of, I mean, testing new actions and seeing if it really changes the data, right? So just recently, for example, we ran a bigger test where if we have a late order, right, the question is always, okay, obviously it's a bad experience, right? Should we wait for the customer to reach out to us and complain, say my order was too late, please give me a discount or give me a compensation, fair enough? Or should we be proactive and tell the customer already, hey, your order will be probably late in 10 minutes, right? But here's already, you know, a voucher or compensation for that bad experience, right? Obviously, from a customer perspective or customer-centric perspective, you should do the second thing, right? It's much better for the customer. But then the big question is, does the customer actually appreciate it enough, right? So do you get the customer really due to that to change his behavior? And so running tests like that obviously requires a lot of data in the background where you really understand how sustainable is that investment and how much does the customer really appreciate me now proactively giving a discount or so.
Yeah. What's the return on the satisfaction of the customer?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
And any also lessons learned that you can reapply in different because the grocery aspect, for example, which is similar in terms of you're also delivering something, but it has big differences maybe in terms of expectations between I'm hungry now, I want to eat my dinner, and I need my groceries. So how do you handle that difference in the two services?
So we launched groceries around like 2.5 years ago, and I think in the beginning, I think as any company would do, we treated it pretty similar, yeah, and that brought us, I think, a decent distance, yeah. But these days we treat it actually quite differently, yeah. I think one example is if you look at delivery times. If you order your restaurant food, obviously you want it like simply as fast as possible, because most people order when they're already hungry, right? So even coming in 15 minutes is already too late. But for groceries, in most cases, it's a bit different, right? So waiting for groceries for 45 minutes can be actually okay. Or it's already considered, these days is considered very fast, yeah? Yep. Because you're maybe used to another solution which kind of delivers on the next day or something like this. So that's one thing which I think is a learning curve for us, where in the beginning we probably over-invested, right? Because delivering faster is more expensive than delivering with moderate speed. I would say another example is that, of course, when you operate grocery delivery, you have a whole new set of operational challenges. Yeah, the whole thing of missing items, for example. So somebody orders, I don't know, 40 different items from a grocery store. For grocery stores, it's quite challenging to understand really what they have in shelf and what not, right? And even if they know it, it's not also so easy to communicate that to us timely if there's not an API integration in place, which often isn't, right? And then the reality is there are then a lot of missing items and so, and handling this in a good way, where I mean, A, there's as little missing items as possible, but B, if there's one, that actually comes back to communication, right? If there's one, what is the right interaction, alignment process with the customer?
Do you replace the item with another one, or just leave it out?
Exactly. Do you cancel the full order? Do you replace it just with something else? Can this something else be slightly more expensive, or does it need to be cheaper, and so on? Is something else close enough to what the customer actually wanted, and all of those things? Yeah. So quite complicated, but yeah, very important to crack that, because it definitely impacts customer experience, of course. Yeah.
So clearly, foodpanda is investing a lot in data analysis and understanding how you can improve the customer experience levels. Maybe, is there anything that you're particularly passionate about improving in the near future, or things that are upcoming in terms of customer experience and communications in general?
Lots of things. No, but I think what's really exciting is I think maybe two things: that we now have the technology that we can be much more in our interactions with customers, much more customer specific. So we understand much better what customers appreciate, how they want to be reached out to, in what form, and so on. So I think and we are still at the beginning of this, so that's exciting. And I think the other point is really moving all of the communication really back into the app, and making it much more native and much more customized to the actual need of communication, I think. Yeah, maybe those two things. Yeah.
Great. No, thank you very much. I have other questions, but the time is getting to the end. I want to thank you for the insights that you've shared with us tonight. I'm sure that some conversations will continue with you afterwards.
So, yeah.
Since you just opened your new regional headquarters, we actually thought that it would be thoughtful to give you some piece of art that is created. It's part of the Social Giving Initiative in Singapore. It's a charity that works with individuals that have autism, and this piece of art was created by them. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks a lot.